Well, hello and welcome to another Sunday morning coffee with Dr. Childress. Today I'm going to be talking about my owls and Vitae review. It's a project I'm doing with some parent advocates that or parent volunteers that I've requested. And so I'll be talking about Vitae review. And I've even got my owl mug today for my um, morning coffee, Sunday morning coffee. The reason I call them owls is I just like owls. Uh, so to begin with, the issue in the family courts is institutional betrayal by the professional psychologists, by the forensic custody evaluators, by the APA, by the licensing boards. For the licensing boards, it's called regulatory capture. That's Stigler. And you can look that up on the Smith and Freud article, an American psychologist. There's another article by Smith, Gomez, and Freud regarding judicial betrayal. And while that has to do with a sex abuse case as an example, it extends more broadly to judicial betrayal. And then we have another article about the APA, American Psychological Association, and institutional betrayal with torture. And so it extends. This is a real thing, institutional betrayal. When those who should protect don't, is the issue. And if you go to my consulting website, up on the parent resources page, that's what I start with, is I start talking about institutional betrayal, because there's no solution for any of you as long as you're in a captured system. The forensic custody evaluators are giving you only one choice. That's the forensic custody evaluation. And they are withholding clinical diagnostic assessments. So you cannot get a diagnosis of the child abuse in your family or the delusional thought disorder. You can't get it because the forensic psychologists say, I don't do that. And no one else works in the family courts and because it's too dangerous to work over here. So that's the institutional betrayal. And then you have the New York Blue Ribbon Commission findings that custody evaluations, what they're giving you, are dangerous, harmful to children, lack scientific legal value, and result in potentially disastrous consequences for you. And that's what they're doing to you. I've been doing it for 40 years, institutional betrayal. Um, and so what I'm doing with the Vitae review has to do with focusing on their boundaries of competence. And here's the ethical standard for psychologists on boundaries of competence. Psychologists provide services, teach, and conduct research with populations and in areas only within the boundaries of their competence, based on, listen to this, education, training, supervised experience, consultation, study, or professional experience. So we've got education, training, and experience, not their opinions. Okay, and that's their journal articles and presentations and all that stuff. That's an opinion. We want to look at education, training, and experience. And in two domains, attachment and delusional thought disorders. And so here's from Walters and Friedlander in the journal Family Court Review. That's the AFCC flagship journal, Family Court Review from 2016. And they say in some RRD families, resist refuse dynamic, that's their new euphemism for covering up child abuse. A parent's underlying encapsulated delusion about the other parent is at the root of the intractability. And notice they cite to me. An encapsulated delusion is a fixed, circumscribed belief that persists over time and is not altered by evidence of inaccuracy of the belief. I find that kind of humorous. The standard phrase, it's a fixed and false belief maintained despite contrary evidence. And apparently they believe that's plagiarism, or no, it's not. That's the standard. Fixed and false belief maintained despite contrary evidence. So you establish that it's a false belief, you present the contrary evidence, and then it's a fixed false belief in that the child is being malevolently treated in some way. And then, so they know it's a delusion. And then the second quote from them is that when alienation, another euphemism for the child abuse that hides it, when alienation is a predominant factor in RRD, resist, refuse dynamic. Notice how they don't rely on real things. It's a delusion. The theme of the favored parent's fixed delusion, that's a DSM-5 diagnosis, often is that the rejected parent is sexually, physically, and or emotionally abusing the child. The child may come to share the parent's encapsulated delusion and to regard the beliefs as his or her own. So if it's a delusion, you have to assess for the delusion. Are they competent in the diagnostic assessment for a delusion? That's a mental status exam of thought and perception. You can cite to Martin and a whole bunch of others. That's the assessment for it. Are they competent in that? No, they're not. And then you can use a brief psychiatric rating scale, item 11, to rate the severity of the delusion. Are they competent in that? No, they're not. And so they are practicing beyond the boundaries of their competence when they are assessing a possible delusional disorder, and they don't know how to assess for a possible delusional disorder. So that's what we're looking at their Vitas. And in addition, because their Vitas are not covered by quasi-judicial immunity or any sort of confidentiality thing, it's a straight 2.0. Are they competent? They're vulnerable on that. 2.01 competence in attachment pathology. Child rejecting a parent is a problem in the love and bonding. It's a problem in attachment. It's a disorganized attachment, no organized strategy to bond to the parent. So it's an attachment pathology. Are they competent in that? No, they're not. Are they competent in the delusional thought disorders? No, they're not. So they are practicing beyond the boundaries of their competence when working with attachment pathology and possible delusions. So what I'm doing, standard 2.01 Vita analysis, is I'm looking at their Vitas, their resumes, regarding competence in attachment pathology based on their education, training, and experience, not their opinion articles and presentations and stuff. They'll have pages and pages of that potentially. I call them puffy Vitas. No, it's the education received, training received, and experience in doing it. Attachment pathology and delusional thought disorders. And then they're competent in the diagnostic assessment of delusional thought disorders based on their education, training, and experience. So last year, in the spring, in January, I took a course in parent-child contact problems. That's another one of their euphemisms. And that raised ethical concerns, 2.04, 2.01, 9.01, 3.04, and others. But that's your cascade of ethical problems. And so I have 1.04 obligations. I contacted them informally under standard 1.04. I sent a letter to them, and you can find that. It's Exhibit 16 up on my consulting website if you want to look at my letter to them, to the instructors, 6 prominent forensic custody evaluators, regarding the ethical concerns. Then you can look at the response of the AFCC instructors to my 1.04 letter, and it was inadequate. They didn't address any of the issues. They just said, well, we don't have to be, or they said what they said. You can read what they said. And then that activated 1.05 for me. So then I contacted the National Committee on Professional Ethics, the APA Ethics Committee, and then I also contacted the AFCC Board of Directors and notified them as appropriate institutional authority. And the APA Ethics Committee said they do not review individual psychologists until after a licensing board complaint. So then I filed 6 licensing board complaints because that's what the standard 1.05 says to do, and that's what APA Ethics Committee said to do. So that's pending before 6 licensing boards. Now, what I did at that point, back in last spring, is I had concerns based on this course for violations to 2.04, bases for scientific and professional judgments, 9.01 bases for assessment, 3.04 avoiding harm. And I'm concerned that they don't know the knowledge. And so that's 2.01 violation. If you don't know attachment and delusions, then you cannot, that's 2.01 violation, then you cannot apply the established knowledge of attachment and delusional thought disorders as a basis for your judgment. That's your 2.04 violation. And therefore, your opinions, as expressed in your reports and diagnostic statements and recommendations, are not based on information and techniques sufficient to substantiate their findings. That's the 9.01 violation, resulting in harm to the children and parents. That's your 3.04 violation. So it's a cascade down. So I was wondering about the 6 instructors of this course regarding their 2.01. Do they even know the knowledge, because they didn't apply any knowledge, which makes me suspect they don't even know the knowledge to begin with. So I worked with ChatGPT 4 at the time, because that was available last spring, and as soon as I was working with. And I developed a protocol. I trained the ChatGPT to analyze Vitas. And so I developed that, and I said, go find the Vitas for all these people. And I found them all online, the 6 instructors. And then I added 2 additional prominent forensic custody evaluators. I said, go find their Vita, go find. And we put them through the Vita analysis for the AI augmented the Vita analysis for attachment pathology and delusional thought disorders. And the third component was doing a lot of custody evaluations. It's a little pattern. They do a lot of custody evaluations without being competent. And you see that over and over. And sure enough, 8 of the top tier forensic custody evaluators are in violation of apparent violation of 2.01. They're not competent in attachment pathology when working with attachment pathology, and they're not competent in delusions when assessing delusional disorders. So then you can read it. You know, it's up online. The primary, you can, up on my blog, you can get to it. It's up on my consulting website. I also have a Substack that talks about how the VEIS, Vita Evaluation Integrity System, that's what Eliza the 4.0 called it. And so you can read all about how we developed that protocol. So in 2026 now, I have discharged my duty to protect in an email to the California Board of Psychology after the hearings. As I'm surrendering my license, I say, okay, here's my California license, but the testimony and the exhibits serve as the discharge of my duty to protect to the California Board of Psychology, and through them to all the 50 state licensing boards. And here's number 3 in my recommendations is for the state licensing boards to conduct a Vita review, to proactively request the Vita of court-involved psychologists identified through court lists and other sources for a standardized AI Vita review for 1, standard 2.01 competence in attachment pathology, and 2, standard 2.01 competence in the diagnostic assessment of delusional thought disorders based on their education, training, and experience. So that would be one of the protections afforded to a vulnerable population. If you're going to force them to do this forensic custody evaluation, then you need to be, the licensing boards don't review these custody evaluations because of quasi-judicial immunity that they grant the custody evaluators, and because they're court ordered, and because of confidentiality issues that you need both parents to consent. So these custody evaluations are exempt from licensing board review. That is your regulatory capture, Stigler. So if the boards are going to do that, they should take special protections to do outreach to make sure these forensic custody evaluators are competent to protect the citizens of their state. And this would do it, but that would be through special protections that escaped an IRB review. So you guys have no protections. And so you're being financially exploited by the psychologist. So I recommend that the licensing boards do this. But if they're not going to do it, I can do it. You can do it. We can all do it. So that's what I'm going to do. And so I have a blog up. You can Google around and find it. It's a blog, AI Augmented 2.01 Vitae Analysis. And in this case, it's with Claude. I asked Claude to do a Vitae analysis of a forensic custody evaluator, and there it said, nope, no apparent competence in attachment or delusional thought disorders. So, I don't know what to tell you. They're not competent. 2.01 based on their education, training, and experience. And you can link, and it links over to the protocol. And I also have a Substack links over to the VEIS protocol. But for this round, I'm going to be using Claude. So I'm going to update the protocol, and it's pretty easy. You can do it yourself. You can do it with ChatGPT or anybody you want. It's not rocket science, pretty easy. And in 2025, I took this course on the parent-child contact problems at Euphemism. And what I'm going to do based on that is I'm going to organize now a group, teams of parents, those are my owls, to locate forensic custody evaluators for states and cities from the court list, locate forensic custody evaluators from online searches, locate forensic custody evaluators through the AFCC involvement, and obtain their Vitae forensic custody evaluators. So just like I recommend to the licensing boards, I'm going to get some parents. I've got about 16 volunteers already, and there may be more joining soon. And I'm going to organize them into kind of little teams and states, basically, however it breaks out. And then the parents are going to start looking to get these Vitas from court lists in their domain, in their little area, and then look online searches, and then look at maybe AFCC has information about their membership or things like that. And you then request the Vita of all the forensic custody. If they don't provide the Vita, that becomes data. If they do provide the Vita, that becomes data. That they're withholding their competence and from the public, and they're or if they do, then they're not competent. If the 8 top are not competent, imagine what everybody else is. So and we'll just document that up, a nice AI protocol, and run it through straight like that, through Claude. And then based on the findings, we'll decide what to do. Okay, so I'm not quite sure what we're gonna do with that at this point, but we'll figure that out. Now, with the parents, one of the reasons I'm involving parents is because I want to activate you guys into empowerment, into advocating for yourselves, effectively advocating for yourselves. So I could do it, and I will be doing it. I've done it, and we'll keep doing it. But might as well get you parents to do it yourselves. And what I'd like next, I'm organizing this through my case manager, Anna. So if you want to be an owl, contact Anna. I have her email up elsewhere, and we'll be giving a little bit more information before we get going or as we get going. But I've asked Anna to set up a Zoom meeting with my owls coming up, where we will kind of organize things. I'd like a few parents to kind of be leadership, and then the rest to be worker owls, going out and finding the Vita, and so we'll be putting that together. Now, I would personally like the parents, if they have an organization, a parent organization, or form an organization, so that they can then decide what to do about this information. How do you appropriately address? Do you contact the licensing boards? Do you contact the APA ethics committee? Do you contact the individual psychologist? Do you contact the AFCC? What do you do? I'd like that to be coming from the parents if possible. I can do it. I will do it. I have done it. But, it's just better if it's coming from you, who are the ones getting hurt by everything. So we'll decide on what to do once we get the information. Now, for me, I have 1.04, and here's what 1.04 says, and it's mandatory. This is what I have to do. When psychologists believe there may have been an ethical violation by another psychologist, so I don't need to prove it. I just believe there may have been. Yeah, the 2.01, and because I'm not seeing it on their Vitae, they attempt to resolve the issue by bringing it to the attention of the individual. So that's what we're required to do first. If an informal resolution appears appropriate and the intervention does not violate any confidentiality rights. So that's what I did. I brought it to their attention. Now, if last year, the 6 forensic custody evaluators, and then they responded, and you can see those, my notification to them and their response. And then it didn't resolve properly in that fashion. They just kind of didn't address the issues. So 1.05 says if an apparent ethical violation has substantially harmed, yes, it has, or is likely to substantially harm, yes, it does, New York Blue Ribbon Commission, a person or organization is not appropriate informal resolution or is not resolved properly in that fashion. And listen to this, psychologists take further action appropriate to the situation. Such action might include referral to a state or national committees on professional ethics, as your APA ethics code, your APA ethics committee, and to state licensing boards. So file a board complaint for 2.01 violation, or to the appropriate institutional authority. That would be the AFCC board of directors in this case. So those are my obligations as a psychologist. They're not obligations to the parent, but they're giving you guidance as to how to report ethical violations to things. And so we're going to look at it and then take the steps, and parents come together and decide what the next appropriate step would be. So that goes back to in 2025, I had the parent-child course, and the chat GPT, so you can see the 1.04 letter I sent out last year. There you can see their response. Then Exhibit 18 is my notice to the APA Ethics Committee, the National Committee on Professional Ethics, and Exhibit 19 is my Board of Directors notification. So you can see all that. That's all up there. And then what I'm doing in 2026 now is just, you can see there's a AFCC online training program, Fundamentals of Contacting Parent Plan Evaluations. And that's what they call the forensic custody evaluations now, is parenting plan evaluations. And you can see it was March 9th through 12th, and then March 16th through 18th. It was 7 days, 14 modules, and then their training team. Well, I took their course, and so I have them, and I have a catalog of concerns that I do to save me time as I do forensic custody evaluations, review of those. So I'm applying that, and I'm applying Claude to the PowerPoints, looking for these concerns and other concerns and things like that, and likely be doing a Vitae analysis with them as well. And then I'll be following up based on what the results find, or what I find from my analysis of 14 modules across 7 days. And so we may be going back to 1.04 letters to the 5 instructors, and then see if that resolves it properly. Likely not. And then we'll take it from there and see what the next steps are to 1.04, 1.05. Simple as that. And then I'm anticipating, hoping, getting that catalog of concerns, getting it up to Amazon. I'll publish it up on Amazon so everybody can see it and everybody can know ahead of time what is the structure being applied, or what is the information being applied to the analysis of these evaluations. So with that, I just want to let you know what I'm up to, and that will be getting parents involved in looking for Vitas. So if you'd like to participate, if you'd like to be an owl, going out and helping find these evaluator, or when it gets to the point of doing something about, once we get the data in, and contact the APA ethics committee if you want to be a parent supporting that process. That's what I'd like the parents to write the notice to the APA ethics committee, and I can provide them with some structure and some help on that. But they've got last year's notice to the APA ethics committee, so they can describe the methodology that they have employed on doing this. They can provide all the data they got on the AI augmented, and now they can ask the APA ethics committee to do the same thing. And we can provide you with all the Vita, and we can provide you, and then what do you do? Maybe the licensing boards, maybe the AFCC, I don't know. But I'd like the parents to take leadership on the OWLS project, because I'm kind of focused in different directions and more directly with the AFCC and the promulgation of this really, really awful forensic custody evaluation model. New York Blue Ribbon Commission, dangerous, harmful to children, lacks scientific and legal value, produced effective reports that result in potentially disastrous consequences for parents and children. Psychologists should never be doing something that is dangerous and harmful to children. We shouldn't be doing it. Whose oversight is that to allow something dangerous that's the licensing board's regulatory capture stickler. So with that, I'm going to head off to my Sunday, and let me put up my little owl cup again. So good luck everybody out there, and we'll just keep going. Just imagine if the licensing boards just start getting just complaint after complaint are they going to just say, nope, I'm not paying attention to any of this, or are they going to address it and eventually get you competent mental health services in the family courts? I don't know. We'll see what happens. So with that, good luck everybody, and we'll talk to you next week about some other aspect of the situation in the family courts. And you can go to my consulting website. I just redid it, and it has attorney resources, parent resources, mental health resources that I provided you with basically everything you need. You just can't get the mental health people to do anything about it. So with that, good luck everybody, and take care.